History will show one of the biggest cons ever, and I mean ever, is that of Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, it was such a con because he is alive. He vanished. And you could take that one of two ways. One, you could take that to believe that he is actually alive on some island, which I cannot rule out. I think it's unlikely, but or you can say that the memory, the operation, that which is this whole mess continues. That it's not just about Jeffrey Epstein. It's about the process, the organization. I'm going to go through some stories with you. It depends upon where you want to go, what you find interesting, what you find critical. I find the narrative to be extremely boring. I don't want to go through that with you now, and I implore you, I beseech, I entreat you to pay close attention, my dear friend. But before we begin, I'm going to tell you right now, flat out, one of the most important things you can do as we speak is for you to understand to go right now to this wonderful site, these great people at preparewithlionel.com. And there it is. Prepare today. You get this incredible 3-month emergency food kit with a free month of emergency food. It's the most incredible thing you've ever seen. Look at the information. Look at what you're talking about. Look at this. I mean, the deals, this kit, the food, the varieties. It's something you cannot believe. And that's the part which kills me. It is so fascinating. Think about this. Enriched, fuel designed for disaster. You can power up with 2,000 calories and a variety of foods to deliver 100% of the recommended daily value of 12 essential vitamins and minerals every day for 90 days. You'll never have to leave your home. In the event you can't leave your home, if it's shelter in place, if it's radiation, if it's fire, if everything's closed, if people are rioting, this is an excellent source of 12 essential vitamins. You get it and forget it. You can store up to 25 years. And by the way, forget boredom. You can choose from 22 different food and drink varieties. No more same old, same old. This is a trusted quality. So let me just put it into detail. Very, very specific. This is what you have to have. And you have to get this now. Preparewithlionel.com. Go and look and take advantage, take heed of this incredible deal. A free 4-week emergency food kit. I have wanted, this was the very first sponsor I asked for. I said, give me this. Because let me tell you something. When all this, I hate to say this, and I mentioned this about anarchy, cash, gold, you know what's going to really matter? Food, water, ammo, fuel, things that are tangible. And food is number one. Preparewithlionel.com. Let me start off, my friends, by taking you through a story that is so interesting and so fascinating that it never ceases to amaze me. The con that has been pulled off. And how, I hate to say it, but your president, who I don't think means to do this, I just don't think he really cares. I mean, I think he's so immersed in what's going on. That little soiree he had the other night with Bill Gates and Zuckerberg sitting next to him, it made me sick to my stomach. But that's just the way it is. But Jeffrey Epstein, who is he? Who is he? Who is he? Who is he? Who was Jeffrey Epstein? Who? Who was he? And you can't answer that question. You'll say, well, I think he was he a person? No. Who was he? What was he? What was he? What was he? What was he? Look at this. Ruth Paine died. Ruth Paine, who opened the home to Lee Harvey Oswald, she died at 92 years. She knows a few things about that. That's an incredible story. But I'll just go talk about that later. But thank you for heads up, whoever brought that to my attention. Thank you for that. Who was he? Who was he? Leader of the honeypot. No, the honeypot is bullshit. That's not the story. That's not important. The honeypot is not important. Do you understand what I'm saying? Forget about the honeypot. That's the limited hangout. That's what they give you to make you think that's the story. And because it deals with sex and supposed minors, did you see these women who were testifying? How many of them were paid? How many of them were auditioning for some role in some, I don't know, some podcast or maybe a deal? Did you see some of these folks? Did they look like victims to you? I'm sorry. I'm not going to mention names. Did you see this? How absolutely do you have to understand the bullshit that is involved in this? Everything that we deal with every single day at every level, and it never ends. And the problem that I deal with is I have to go on and talk to a bunch of people who keep talking about women, and that's not it. How do I? So I know you're here because you want to know something different. And the truth is here. Jeffrey Epstein's name has been painted across the headlines as shorthand for sex trafficking and extortion and depravity. That's the cover story. That's the limited hangout. That's what they're telling you is what this was about. That's the cover story. The deeper narrative, as mapped by many, many people through the years, is one of financial pipelines, intelligence operations, intel, shadow networks, arms deals, covert finance, and surveillance state profiteering intersecting. The names of the people that are fascinating. Everybody thinks that this guy is some loser, this Jeffrey Epstein who didn't have a college degree, who was plucked out of obscurity by Bill Barr's father, who was given this job at Dalton, and then somehow met Les Wexner and did, what was it, not Bear Stearns, but it was he became some traitor, and it was so obvious. Everybody said, who is this guy? He's not a traitor. People who are Wall Streeters, big shots, say, I've never heard of this guy. They know every name out there. And he was out there in the open, and everybody knew it. But our narrative, the cable news narrative, is the fact that he was this perv who had this girlfriend, and he had people like, yeah, it might have been a perv, but guess what? So is all of Hollywood and 90% of Washington. When you connect Douglas Lease, Adnan Khashoggi, and the flows of money through institutions like J.P. Morgan Chase and others, you get a story not about isolated criminality, but about an ongoing architecture of covert power. That's what this is about. Epstein's introduction into this world was not random. It wasn't just Douglas Leese, Leese. Look him up. Write down the names, I'm telling you. This isn't hidden. He was a British defense consultant and operator in the Al Yamama arms deal. Isn't that great? Yamama. Al Yamama was an arms deal. It was connected with Adnan Khashoggi. This was the Saudi arms dealer whose career epitomized how weapons trafficking blurred with intelligence. See, that's the beauty of this. You've really got to get into it. You've got to love complexity. And you have to love things that are not necessarily good, bad, up, down. Khashoggi laundered petrodollars through Western banks and cultivated ties with everyone from CIA to Mossad, you name it. And Epstein, the school teacher turned financier, He was pulled into this orbit as a facilitator, not the puppet master. He was useful. He could move money, set up structures, provide services that blurred between financial and personal. He was good. He was real good. So many. You have to understand that Epstein's operations were not primarily about sex. Do you understand this? Is anybody listening to me? Is anybody going to cover this? And this is old. The sex trafficking and blackmail, angle, it was real, but it was also a useful cover story. It was the limited hangout, the kind of sensational detail that distracts the public from the less lurid but more dangerous reality. Systemic money laundering, covert finance for intel-linked projects, mechanisms of leverage for banks and corporations and governments. That's what it was about. That's what it was about. This is the most important. The banks, the critical conduct. Epstein wasn't simply a client. He was a node. That's a very interesting word now. He was a node in a network of off-balance sheet flows, shell companies, arrangements that allowed capital from arms deals and oil and covert operations to be washed and parked and redirected. He was really good at this. And you've been looking at it from just the Virginia Giuffre line. That's all you've been talking about, because that's also enticing. See, they think you're stupid. They think you're going to hear about the sex part, and that's going to be it. That your interest is going to just go away. That you are going to you're going to go for the low-hanging fruit, the cable news stuff. When you look at the architecture, this lease worked Al Yamama, one of the largest arms for oil deals between Britain and Saudi Arabia. Billions in unaccounted funds. Billions. Sloshed around the BAE systems and front companies and Western banks. There is a backdoor to this. There is a world of finance and drugs. At levels. And what you saw, by the way, that little soiree with the president and the first lady and Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg says, we're investing $600 billion. No, he's buying the company. The company is the country. See, this is what Palantir did. We'll get this in a moment. This is the most fascinating. Remember the name Adnan Khashoggi? Does that sound interesting? Adnan Khashoggi was the middleman, and Epstein became the apprentice in that, I hate that word, but they call it the ecosystem. And he learned how to move money in ways that created plausible deniability. Plausible deniability for the elites involved. When other banks became his financial home, it wasn't because he was an exceptional investor, but because he knew how to play the game the banks themselves were complicit in. Do you think the monies that were paid out somehow were to cover monies that were paid or traversed to victims of sex trafficking? No. That was the side story. You see, you have to understand, to pull the camera back, Epstein functioned as a mechanism of continuity. By the way, continuity of government, which is a whole other story too. He was plugged into a network that long predates him. Iran-Contra, BCCI, Promise Software, and the same set of actors who blurred state security with private enrichment. That's the way it was. Jeff, thank you, Jeff. Jeff Yezik, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Jeff. You're a good and a kind man. Thank you for your contribution and support. See, extortion was part of it, but the deeper purpose was managing flows of power and capital outside normal democratic oversight. trafficking human beings, minors especially, served as one channel of leverage. Look, let me explain something to you. One of the things that people forget is that when you're at that level, you're going to provide, people are going to have everything to keep parties and folks going. You want drugs? I get you drugs. You want Super Bowl tickets? I get you that. You want women? I get you that. What do you want? So yeah. And of course there's some filming, but that's all obsolete. That's all obsolete. You're not going to need this anymore. This is so, peephole stuff. But the core was financial. What Jeffrey Epstein was financial. Somebody who could be trusted to move dirty money in ways that kept operations afloat and participants silent. And he was the main guy. Why do you think it's important? Why do you think it was important for him eventually to be dispatched? Do you think they worried about him showing his videos or his hard drives of some luminary having sex with a minor? No. You see, what's so important is that the whole notion becomes interesting. The Epstein connection becomes more intelligible in this light. You see, the bank was, J.P. Morgan Chase, was fined billions over money laundering and failures related to, different, remember cartels and Madoff and other operations. See, banks in general did. Epstein fit the same mold. He provided a high-value clientele and offshore vehicles and the willingness to be, the dirty handler. This is, they talk about bank executives closest to Epstein maintaining hundreds of contacts with him even after his first conviction. See, that wasn't recklessness. There was recognition that Epstein's utility outweighed his liability. This is much deeper than this, my friend. Epstein's islands and planes and parties. By the way, why wasn't Zorro or his New Mexico island, why wasn't that ever searched? It was the New York one. They're not looking for anything. What about the Paris connection? There's, I can give you names of people who were also mysteriously died that you never hear about. You see, the parties were the visible tip. The invisible structure was deeper. Shell companies. I know this sounds boring. Shell companies, wire transfers, charitable foundations, used as laundromats. The problem with anything, remember, is how to move the money. How do you move it? You can only clean it so much through legitimate business. And when you're talking about billions with wire transfers where people say, I will only deal with you so long as you can ensure my anonymity, so long as you have somebody who is involved in this and somebody who can take the fall and in some way can be dispatched, just moved out of the way in case something happens. You see, you have to understand the relationship with entities like Wexner's, Les Wexner's limited brands. Remember this? Les Wexner. How many of you have heard that name? It's never come up. It doesn't come up. You see, the connection to the limited brand and Victoria's Secret and all that, it's not as some quirky personal connection, but as financial pipelines. Epstein set up trusts and offshore accounts and shadow vehicles. He was the bridge between illicit capital flows and legitimate markets. He could launder Khashoggi's commissions and leases off-ledger arms profits. I mean, he was good. And other covert funds through Western finance, disguising them as philanthropy, hedge funds, legitimate investments. He took care of it. That's what he did. Nod once if you understand what I'm saying. This is why the Epstein story has always been truncated and minimized in mainstream coverage. If the press frames him as a depraved outlier, some monster operating on the margins, then systemic accountability is avoided. But if you follow the research, if you go deeper, something that cable news will not be involved in, you realize that Epstein was systematically embedded. See, his utility to his utility to Intel-linked finance, explains his protection, the sweetheart deals, the mysterious leniency. But he was not too smart to fail. He was too useful to burn until his exposure outweighed his value. For whatever reason, someone said, it's time for him to go. The extortion angle, while real, is also misunderstood. You see, blackmail has always been a tool of intel services. Absolutely. From the British Profumo affair to COINTELPRO to Mossad's documented use of sex traps, Epstein's role was to provide the infrastructure, properties wired with surveillance, compromised individuals, lured into situations that they couldn't escape. And the recording equipment, this is important, the recording equipment that was used to ensure permanent leverage. But the purpose wasn't, voyeuristic. It was functional. A bank executive, politician, a businessman, compromised this way, becomes pliable. And that ensured smoother laundering, quieter compliance, fewer leaks. But also understand something. When you're at that level and you're dealing with somebody who is so big, so huge, that they're involved in something of this nature, you have to understand a couple of things here. First and foremost, they know about blackmail. They know this. Blackmail is as old as the dark arts. It is as old as you can imagine. And it's done all the time. Many of them have probably ordered it. So you have to ask yourself, why don't people realize this? I mean, especially young girls. With Jeffrey Epstein, they did their due diligence to an extent. They can tell a spook a mile away. But why they did it, we don't know. It's one of the many things you got to ask yourself. Why do so many people do so many stupid things? And when you have the marriage of arms dealers like Khashoggi and financiers like Epstein and J.P. Morgan and Deutsche, all the big ones, because remember, they don't want you to understand how this thing works. It all represents a single architecture. Covert funds moving through respectable channels, and the cover was trafficking and extortion and sex. But the reality was systemic corruption. Industrial scale laundering and diffusion, the connection of intel with finance. See, Epstein's death, like his career, was a mechanism of containment. It kept the story confined to the surface rather than structural. And the most interesting to note is that Epstein was not unique. He was replaceable, fungible. He was a functionary in a recurring system. Before him, BCCI fulfilled the same role, laundering covert money for intel operations, while running drugs and arms and blackmail. The Promise software in the 1980s provided backdoors for intel collection, all of it disguised as commercial, finance software. This is really good. When you really get into this stuff, the names change, but the pattern remains. Surveillance, finance, covert operations, all connecting under this shield or aegis of national security. Let me explain something to you. And I want you to think about this. Epstein's relationships with tech also bear mention. You see, his funding of scientists, his obsession with eugenics, a lot of these people do this. His courting of figures in Silicon Valley. See, this wasn't eccentric, philanthropy. It paralleled the way that intelligence has long used science and tech as a cover for deeper projects. Epstein was at MIT and Harvard and other nodes. I love that word. It's my new word, nodes. That because of, because he was, interesting, but not because he was brilliant, but because he could funnel money and extract influence. Palantir, DARPA, and other organizations, entities echo the same convergence. Listen to what I'm saying. Are you paying attention? Are you paying attention? What you saw yesterday. They love to do this in the open. They love two things: symbolism and hiding in plain sight. They want everybody to know what they're doing. They are laughing their ass off. I'm in front. They're telling everybody, look at me. I hope Trump has the biggest package for his family, maybe offloaded, deferred, something. But what you saw with those people, this is the biggest, these are the biggest names in the world. We're talking this convergence. Data collection. Data is the currency of the 21st century. Financial control. Surveillance. All justified as innovation. This is the thing. This is what AI is about. This is what, the other night we were talking on ABC about these people who believe still in this nonsense. This nonsense about global warming and climate change. I guess it's just climate change. They don't even call it the warming because it's up and it's down. What do you think that's about? It's about gaining control over you through CBDC and through surveillance and through digital currencies and credit scores and making sure that you enjoy certain luxuries provided you follow the right regimes, the right politics. You see, Epstein's story isn't about one predator, but about the continuity of a system. And by the way, remember, continuity of order. Remember the continuity, these legislative pieces that provide for basically a new form of government in the event of some kind of disaster. I mentioned these names again: Douglas Leese, Adnan Khashoggi. They show how arms money seeded the networks. The banks show, how Western banks became conduits. And Epstein shows you how operators are groomed and deployed and discarded. It's fascinating. And what many, many people are saying is that the sex scandal is not the story. It's the smokescreen, the limited hangout. The story is that private individuals, banks, intel services, all, got together and collaborated in this architecture, this superstructure that ensure that elites are never accountable. See, this is the broader architecture of globalism. This is where, what protects people here in this country? The fact that it's boring. The cover for most of these people today is that this is boring, or that it's considered boring. It's a lot of moving parts. When you tell people this, they look at you like, doesn't sound exciting. It's the new world. Not the new world order, but kind of just the new world. This is globalism. The same networks that pushed arms and laundered petrodollars also advanced digital surveillance and new economic controls. See, that's what they want. Epstein's connections to scientists, also interested in genetic engineering, AI, transhumanism, predictive analytics, all of this linked directly to today's pushes for biometric ID, CBDCs, carbon credit economics. Are you following this? See, the surveillance island mirrored the surveillance state. It's kind of a unique similarity. The personal blackmail, in essence, replicated or mirrored the systemic blackmail. It's all of a piece. Coercion disguised somehow as progress. See, this is why Epstein matters. If he were just some sex criminal, his name would fade. But he sits at the intersection again of arms, intel, banks, blackmail. Again, transhumanism, eugenics. Thank you, Jeff Epstein. His real crime was showing how the system works. And if you look elsewhere to the stuff that we find interesting, it forces us to confront this. Epstein was not an aberration. He's a window into the structure of power itself. When I mention Palantir to people, they still don't understand it. And the story continues because the structure continues. And he is dead but alive. He was just a player. He's been replaced. He vanished. He'll be replaced. He'll be moved. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell is nothing special. As long as you have her to remind you, you look at her, ooh, she's the girlfriend. She was the one who lured the girl. Chase has paid settlements, others, but no one's been jailed. And I mentioned this lease and Khashoggi. These are footnotes, but their methods live on. See, the structure continues. There always will be, Epstein never dies. You can kill him, but there's another one. He's the front man. He had a good life. He had a good time. He's dead, but the architecture of laundering and blackmail and covert finance, that all survives. Have you ever heard of this total information awareness? TIA, total information awareness. You ever heard of this? This is Palantir and today's, I guess call it surveillance capitalism. See, Peter Thiel is the guy. That's your Soros. That's bigger than Elon Musk. Bigger than everybody. Peter Thiel, top of the heap. No. He is it. And he and his friends prove that the convergence of finance and tech and intel has only deepened. The next Epstein may not use mansions and private islands. He's going to use digital platforms, biometric databases. The function will be the same. Thank you, Jeff Epstein. Thank you, sir. They're going to manage flows of money, influence, and control outside the reach of usual scrutiny. Palantir is huge. See, all this information is bleak, but it's clarifying. You see, Epstein's role wasn't anomalous. It wasn't reducible to sex. It was systemic. This is what I'm trying to tell you. And nobody's going to be telling you this because they're too busy watching Bobby Kennedy yell at Pocahontas. You're too busy yelling and looking at other things. That's what it's about. See, the cover of trafficking and extortion distracts from really the true engine, laundering money, still from arms and oil and covert operations and stuff that's illegal and drugs and you name it. And you got to have banks. And while using blackmail as social superglue, all of it merges. The story isn't about one man's depravity. It's about a recurring structure of unaccountable power. Thank you, Jeff Epstein. And when I tell you this, I know it sounds kind of boring. I know I kind of know it does. And I don't expect it to be any different. But you see, we know what's going on. Now, you can do one of two things. You can go along and watch regular old cable news, which is fine. And you'll know that story. You'll learn the story of... It's just like John Kennedy's assassination. People say, well, that was because he said he was going to blow the intel into 1,000 pieces. Yeah, sort of, maybe. That's part of it, but not really. It's a little bit more complicated than that. It's a little more complicated than that. This is big stuff, my friends. Big stuff. And what people have to understand and grasp is that there is something which is so critical here. And what you need to do is we need to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and get to the bottom of this and find out what's going on. And acquaint ourselves with stuff, even though it's not fun. what preceded Palantir was Thiel and General Poindexter. Remember him? Remember Richard Pearl? And they basically merged private capital with Intel. And now everything you want to know about somebody, every bit of metadata, they have every scrap of data. And with that, we get into predictive programming. We get into this nonsense about, well, let me tell you something. Before I forget, the biggest cover is American ignorance. How many of you thought it was cool that we blew that? Did you hear that story about that Tren de Aragua boat? Do you believe that bullshit? Anybody believe that? That there was Tren de Aragua? Who believes that story? What do you think that's about? What do you think about that? What do you think about that? Why is Venezuela so important? What do we care about Venezuela? What do we care about Venezuela? What's this all about? Maduro and all these people. What is it? What is it about? Let me ask you a question. Tell me. I'm looking right now. I'm looking at your answers. Why is Venezuela? What do we want with Venezuela? What does Venezuela to do with anything? What? Are we going for regime change? Imperialism? Oh, you betcha. Why? Deportations? Nope. Why is it so important? Money, Jack's clothes, money, keep going. Land, oil. This is like the largest or whatever. It is so untapped. Minerals. I mean, it is a gold mine. Sometimes that never gets old. So we're going to create a story, a narrative of how TDA and women and girls and trafficking, we're going to blow the hell out of this boat because we have toys, and cable news shows us you love that stuff. At least they think you are. They love for you to get distracted. Bring out old Bobby Kennedy yelling and screaming. What was that about? Nothing. What was that about? Gazillion dollars. We don't even know how much money they made. But not only did we lose money, or actually people make money because of COVID, what we lost in terms of personal liberty we'll never get back. Ever. You understand what I'm saying? Never get back. This has nothing to do with it. The real goings on, the real operational stuff of this government is so interesting. That's why they're doing everything in their power to throw you up. Let me give you an example of something. There is a place in New York, you may have seen them, they're called Radicios, or there's one place, Churrascaria Plataforma, it's on 50th, and it basically is that it's a great joint for people to enjoy things like meat, with the red and the green coasters that you use. But when you walk in, there's a salad bar. And you see the salad bar lures you. And they want you to go to the salad bar and be filled with that. They want that to be the focus of your concern. Let it be the salad bar. Yeah? Fill up on that. Fill up on these stories. And nobody's saying there's no TDA, Tren de Aragua. Nobody's saying that. I never said there was no COVID. Of course there was COVID. Some people almost died of it. That's not the issue. That's the excuse. That's the cover. Because Americans love war toys, and they will go along with anything that's being done. So just let me tell you something. Listen to me careful. I'm going to say this until everybody finally gets it. Stop listening to this business about the sex trafficking. That's not what Epstein was about. That's not the important part. That's nothing. What he did and what was going on, what he could have exposed in terms of that, could bring down the entire system. And they said, you know what? There comes a time when anybody who's involved in this particular business is just expurgated after a period of time, just to make sense. Just to be clear. So, my friends, I thank you for this. I thank you for watching. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I might do a few more of these later today, so let me know. But in any event, remember a couple of things. Whatever you see on cable news, that's not the truth. But what they want you to believe is the truth. It's a distraction. It's a limited hangout. It's a bait and switch. It's a cover. It's the tell. It's palming the card. It's all of that stuff. It's to lie to you and distort. And they do it right in front of you because they think you're stupid. And not only do you don't feel bad, the media don't get it. Look at these jadruls. Look at it on cable news. You think they're interested in going to the bottom? No. They like the narrative. And if it involves guns and war and toys and little boys and sex and women and prostitutes, that's it. That's their catnip. That's their salad bar that fills them up so that they lose their appetite for the complicated stories. Works very, very smart. All right, my friends, have a great and a glorious day. Thank you. We may see you later. Don't forget to subscribe to Lionel Nation. Some of you are somehow unsubscribed. I don't know why. So please, please, please do that. Lionel Nation. And also, as I've said before, dear friends, and I'll say it again, Prepare with Lionel is the premier emergency food source. Not only that, generators and water purifiers. Go to preparewithlionel.com and take advantage of this free 4-week emergency food kit deal that you may never see again. Okay? And people are buying this in droves. See what gold sales are up to? What does that mean? People are portending doom. Hate to say it. All right, dear friends. We love you. Have a great and glorious day. Thank you so much. We'll talk later. Don't forget, the monkey's dead. The show's over. Sue you. Da-da.